Ayahuasca, also known as the vine of the dead, the vine of souls, and la purga, is a brew made from the leaves of the Psychoatra viridis shrub along with the stalk of the Banisteriopsis capi vine. Thought other plant and ingredient can be added as well. This drink was used for spiritual and religious purpose by ancient Amazonian tribes and is still used as a sacred beverage by some religious communities in Brazil and North America, including the Santo Daime. Traditionally, a shaman or curandero, an experienced healer who leads ayahuasca ceremonies, prepare the brew by boiling thorns leaf of the Psychotria viridis shrub and stalks of the Banisteriopsis capi vine in water. The Banisteriopsis capi water is cleaned and smashed before being boiled to increase the extraction of its medicinal compounds. When the brew has been reduced to the shaman's liking, the water is removed and reserved, leaving behind the plant material. This process is repeated until a highly concentrated liquid is produced. Once cooled, the brew is strained to remove impurities. Ayahuasca is a brew made from the Banisteriopsis capi and Psychotria viridis plant. Taking ayahuasca leads to an alternated state of consciousness due to the psychoactive compounds in the ingredients.
Until recently, we did not have the knowledge of how far back the use of ayahuasca stretched. This was mainly due to Western societies that discovered Americas, as they were more interested in the indigenous people's lands rather than their culture. However, with present-day research, we've discovered that the use of ayahuasca stretches back thousands of years, with evidence of it found in a cave in Bolivia back in 2010. But looking back at the indigenous people of the Amazon rainforests, we know with today's knowledge that we had a huge impact on their way of life, which was forever changed. One major impact of this was the implementation of Christianity, which has led to many present-day shamans implementing Christianity into their rituals. However, the Western civilization is still delivering new impacts on the indigenous people and their culture of ayahuasca, with today's impact being the increasing demand for ayahuasca. This new increasing demand has been evidently clear for the past 10 years. This in turn has led to many new ayahuasca retreats being set up in the Amazon rainforest. However, unlike history, the retreats today are in majority not run by the indigenous people. Instead, they are employed by Western ayahuascan enthusiasts who want to capitalize on this trend. This capitalization has, however, resulted in a negative effect as well, with the increasing amounts of scammers who are called witches by shamans. Now, these witches masquerade themselves as shamans and entice tourists to drink ayahuasca in their presence. Real shamans believe that the purpose of these witches is to steal the consumer's life energy, which we only have certain amounts of.
By definition, cultural appropriation is the taking over of creative, artistic forms or themes of practices by one cultural group from another. You can also define it as the social equivalent of plagiarism, with an added dose of denigration. It is actually a very common phenomenon that many people have trouble understanding or realizing when they are doing it themselves. From Halloween costumes to sport mascots on the field, we've seen how one person's idea of innocent fun is often another person's idea of a flat-out ethnic stereotyping and racism. It may seem natural to merge and blend cultures as people from different backgrounds come together and interact. Such as wonderful inventions have been born from the merging of such culture, like country music. However, we have to draw a line when a dominant cultural group makes use of elements of a non-dominant group in a way that the non-dominant group views as exploitative. So, for example, in the 1950s, white musicians invented rock and roll. However, the musical style was borrowed from black musicians who never received the credits. Music executives chose to promote white performance over black performance, reinforcing the idea that cultural appropriation involves impact on a non-dominant group. Cultural appropriation is still happening nowadays, with campus activists criticizing things like white students dressing up as stereotypical Mexicans for parties, or the use of ethnic stereotypes for sport mascots, such as the Washington Redskins. So, is a spiritual retreat, such as Ayahuasca ceremony, a cultural appropriation?
If the definition of cultural appropriation is to take an existing idea from a culture and to apply it to your own, then this behavior can definitely be observed in the União do Vegetal, a religious society that regularly practices its ayahuasca ceremonies. Hancock's Supernaturals Meeting Book mentions the UDV on page 75 under the title Shamanism Comes to Suburbia. He mentions that the UDV prepare the brew in an almost identical fashion as the river shamans, but with a few minor alterations. The most important difference here, in my viewing, is that they have taken the tradition of preparing and ingesting the brew in the rainforest with one's own tribe and brought the practice to everyday middle-class Brazilians. The group get together in self-made auditoriums around Guarantiba, normal middle-class Brazilians, and they drink the brew and guide themselves hierarchically through the experience, hoping to learn or achieve some level of therapy. To provide contrast, we can look at other scenarios, such as a tribe living on the Amazonian frontier. Life is tough, and this ceremony is part of their culture. For these tribes people, ayahuasca is a way in which they understand and shape their own beliefs about reality. The ceremonies are deeply ingrained in their culture and deeply ancestral. Ceremonies are done to fulfill inner mysteries one might have, to help form one's worldviews, or to meet with a loved one that has passed away. Although there might be other reasons for use, we can conclude that these ceremonies are done to fulfill certain needs within the tribe's individuals, and that they also serve as a coming-of-age ceremony. So how else is the substance practiced? In general, we can observe the overall trend that exists, which is an increase in Western demand for the substance. For example, you might have people who want to explore part of their psyche, others who are interested in the benefits, and others just want closure or therapy. However, whatever the reason, Western demand for the experience is high, and we suspect much of the ritualistic meaning and nature to the ceremony is lost when it is made to cater to Westerners. All in all, one thing remains obvious. As Westerners, we have taken this ceremony that originated in the heart of the Amazon and applied it to our own demands. We have done this through all the ayahuasca tourism that goes on and all the distinct ayahuasca societies that exist. This is why we believe, according to the definition of the term, that there does indeed exist cultural appropriation within the broad use of ayahuasca and its ceremonies.